Hey everyone! To go straight to the point, I decided to give up on developing Hidden Tactics, my first Steam game. Hidden Tactics is a video game adaptation of a board game prototype I created last year. If you don't know me, I'm Julian, an indie game developer, and I'm working on my first Steam game, Hidden Tactics. I created this system for my game, Hidden Tactics. I think I have acquired skills in game dev, and now I want to show what I'm capable of in a professional context, and this is what I'm trying to do in Hidden Tactics. And I actually think that if I take the adequate time to build the systems, I can do robust things and get a functional game in the end. I hope so, actually. So, what happened? In one word, scope creep. Well, those are two words actually. But it is slightly more complex than that. I think the game itself wasn't too ambitious. I had planned one game mode, 4 factions with around 10 units per faction, and simple mechanics around the auto-battler genre. Things were actually going good until last September. I was done with most of the units' AI, the battle mechanics, the game flow. I had created the main menu and the deck creation menu. I even tested the game with friends using local network, and that worked well, except for the terrible balancing and the humongous amount of non-critical bugs. But I haven't mentioned yet one key aspect of the game that caused its downfall. You might have guessed it by now, of course, I'm referring to multiplayer. But before I continue with the bunch of mistakes I made with this project, let me introduce you to this video sponsor, MiniFantasy. As you might already know, MiniFantasy is a huge collection of assets all set in the same universe. The art style is really charming. Every time there's a new asset pack release, I wonder how you can create such detailed animations with 8x8 pixel resolution. In the collection, you will find everything you need to make your wildest game ideas become a reality. Tile sets to create your levels, creatures to populate your worlds, props and NPCs, mounts for your heroes, spells and magic, and much more. What's really cool about this collection is that everything revolves around different humanoid types. So we have humans, elves, orcs and goblins, and halflings. And every piece of content is compatible with these humanoid types. This is actually how I was able to create Hidden Tactics, since the 4 factions in the game were using the full potential of these interconnectable animations. By the way, for Hidden Tactics, you might notice it's not exactly the same art style. That's because I upscaled ×4 the MiniFantasy Assets. You can do that using any upscaling plugin online. That's really simple. And that's how I managed to get these smoother edges. So if you're interested in these assets, well, head to the link in the description. You'll find all of the collection at an unbeatable price. This supports both me and my indie games and Krishna and his indie pixel art. So thanks so much to all of you who support us through this link. And thanks to MiniFantasy for sticking out with me during, well, basically all of 2024. Now let's head back to the origins of this project. October 2023, I decided to start working on my very first Steam game. A video game adaptation of my board game, Hidden Tactics. So of course, before starting to work on the project, I had to check if I would be able to create a multiplayer game. So I went through both of CodeMonkey's videos around multiplayer.
Hello and welcome, I'm your CodeMonkey.
By the way, if you want to be introduced to multiplayer using Unity, I highly recommend those videos. They're really good to start with. I figured out the basics of network and the netcode solution for Unity. I grabbed 1 or 2 helper assets, and after a few weeks with this knowledge, I felt confident enough to start working on the game. Until then, I didn't feel like I had made any major mistake. But I was wrong. The actual choice of the game was a mistake. I just shouldn't have chosen Hidden Tactics as my first Steam game when my previous project was Shepherd for Hire, a tiny casual game I had created in 1 month, and I was jumping into an online multiplayer PvP game. What could go wrong? I could have just copied and pasted my board game as a video game. And I should have. A turn-based game on a grid, mixing tactical and auto-battler elements, would have been a great first experience with multiplayer. And with publishing a game on Steam. But that's where I made my second mistake. There comes supersized brain Julian with his big dreams and huge ego going, Why make a turn-based game when video games allow you to overcome board game limitations by giving life to static units and see them battle in real time? So cool! I felt like it would make the multiplayer aspect much more complex. There wouldn't be much more data to synchronize between the players, right? Now that's where I need to dig a bit deeper in hidden tactics design and multiplayer architecture. Basically, the game is designed in a series of rounds, each round being split in two phases. The preparation phase, that's where the players buy, place and upgrade units, and the battle phase, where units fight each other completely automatically, just as in any auto battler, and the players can't interfere with the battle in any way. So technically speaking, the plan was simple. The only data I needed to synchronize between both players was the new units placed by the players and their position on the battlefield. Both players would then run their simulation on their local machines. This way I don't even need to worry about more complex multiplayer issues, and my servers wouldn't cost too much. So with this plan in mind, I created my first two units, the Samurai and the Giant, and I set up the basics of the network systems. After a few weeks of work, I could finally test my first unit encounter. Why is the outcome of the fight not the same on both machines? Well, I learned at my expense the concept of deterministic physics. This means that two different machines will have, for example, tiny differences in how they handle float numbers, or other things like different frame rates can cause some huge differences when you're using a physics system in a game engine. And the way I designed Hidden Tactics required those physics simulations, most noticeably to handle knockbacks, which were used by many units. And maybe this is where I should have sat down and rethought the game's design as a whole to completely remove the physics simulation. Maybe that could have worked. Well, at least I should have given it a try. But I wanted the game to look cool. And that meant I needed the physics system. Well, no problem. I'll just completely rework the whole multiplayer systems I've already spent a few weeks on. Finest decision. So, after making my third big mistake in this game's development, I actually managed to make it work. The battle phase was correctly synchronized between both players. Yes! I could now start working on all the other systems and content required to have a playable beta test version I could hand all of you. Literally hundreds of working hours later, I had all the core content and systems in place. There was just one more tiny little thing I had to add. The lobby system, which I should have done in the first place. Because until now I was continuously testing the game in localhost. And yeah, you guessed it, this is where stuff gets nasty. After managing to connect two players using the Unity lobby systems, I tested the game. And there were huge lags, especially when the client would try to place a new unit. In fact, creating new objects on the server is a very heavy operation that creates huge delays between the host and the client. Okay, no problem, I'll implement network object pooling. I'll create all the objects on the network before a game starts. I'll just activate and deactivate them when needed. By the way, I had never implemented object pooling before, and network object pooling was like much more complex than I imagined. Alright. 2 weeks later, my network object pooling system is functional, and this had fixed the huge lag problem. So I tried pushing the limits of the game further, adding more and more units. And when reaching around 50 units on the battlefield, this happened. The network seems to be completely crashing on the client side, and nothing seems to be responding anymore. Alright, don't panic, there must be solutions to this problem. I could start by optimizing my code. There are indeed many systems I can optimize. I know I'm synchronizing the positions of my unit every frame. I also know their AI is not optimal. A few days of optimization later, I could reach around 100 units on the battlefield before the network crashes down, and the game required to support more than 200 units, up to 300. This is when I slowly started to panic. I then spent 3 full weeks trying to fix this problem. Using the profiler, I was able to analyze the amount of data that was transferred over the network and how that was done. So that allowed me to visualize the impact of different solutions I could test out. I learned about network concept I was unfamiliar with, such as packets and batching. Tried switching to Unity's native solution to synchronize unit positions. I went over every possible forum post to see if anyone had the same problem as me, and to test out any possible solution. All this to keep reducing more and more the amount of data transferred over the network. Every morning I would wake up, boot up the project, try a new solution or fix the previous one, all this to notice how it doesn't work, and finish the day extremely frustrated. Developers out there can attest how frustrating it is to end a day on an unfinished bug. And all this work paid. I managed to get around 150 units on the battlefield simultaneously before the network crashes, but it keeps crashing. And what really drove me crazy, and what I still don't understand today, is when I look at the profiler, the amount of data that is effectively transferred over the network does not seem much compared to like the video game industry standards. I mean, come on, like 15 kilobytes per second and around 200 packets per second? That doesn't seem like a crazy amount, right? So anyways, more than 1 month after hitting my first network problem, I would struggle to get out of bed in the morning to work on this project, where until now this job made me start every new day full of energy. I would turn on my PC and start loading the project with a lot of apprehension. All of my initial motivation for this project had been drained by this month of struggle. And finally, on a Monday evening, after yet another day of failing on fixing my game, I just couldn't do it anymore. So we sat down with my partner and considered the different options I had with this project. Keep on working on the project at the cost of my mental health, potentially failing to fix the problem and losing more time, ask for help from a professional developer, even investing more money in this project if that's necessary and if that could help, or give up on this project for now. And this last option was the only one that would bring a sparkle of hope at the time. So a huge shout out to my partner for helping me with this decision. It was a really tough decision, but I know it was the right call, especially because there were other aspects due to the multiplayer part of the game that would make me anxious on a regular basis, such as matchmaking, renting servers, and keeping the project commercially viable on the long run. But most importantly, the fact that if the game doesn't attract a lot of players at launch, it will be doomed to fail, since new players won't match with anyone when they boot up the game, and they'll just ask for a refund. Despite all the energy and money I had invested in this project, I'm sure this was the right decision. I didn't mention yet another mistake I did with this project, more on the commercial side. I had heard advices on YouTube that it's a good thing to have your Steam page up and running as fast as possible, even if it means using mock-up art, because wishlists pile up with time, so mathematically the earlier you get your Steam page out, the more wishlists you have on release day, right? Following this advice, I had set as first milestone to publish my Steam page, and I shaped all of the game's development around that objective. That meant first I need nice visuals to have cool screenshots and GIFs. Spent a lot of time working on those visuals, way too much time for this stage of development, and 3 months later I had my Steam page up. But I had no teaser trailer, and the wishlist did not pile up. The game is still sitting at 630 wishlists now, with around 0 to 2 wishlists per day, which is nothing. With a step back, I think it was way too early to worry about marketing the game and creating a Steam page. By the way, my Steam page was actually reviewed by Chris and CodeMonkey in a video, so if you want to check that out, it's in the description. And despite the great artwork made by my partner artist Nico Square, the lack of a trailer was the major problem they pointed out. So following Chris's advice, in my next project, I'll try making the release of my Steam page a real event. With of course a teaser trailer I'll try sending around, hoping enough wishlists on a brand new Steam page will boost its visibility. So that's one key lesson I learned with this project on the commercial side. I shouldn't worry too much about marketing the game when I haven't really started developing the game. Okay, so what now? Well, I've been secretly working on a new project since then, and I'm completely obsessed by it. Which also explains why I haven't posted any new videos since then. I'll be sharing more about this project in future videos on this channel, but what I can tell you without too many spoilers is that it's an innovative multiplayer PvPvE extraction game. Nah, just kidding. It's not multiplayer. Yeah, the scope is much smaller. I'm planning an early access release in June or September 2025, so I hope I can stick to the schedule. I'm so excited to share more details about this project on YouTube. I could just show you a real short snippet of gameplay right now. But if you can't wait and you want to know more about the project, you can always join my Discord server. The link is in the description. I'm sharing weekly video capsules of its development there. And to celebrate this first year as a full-time indie game developer making no money, my partner offered me this printed Hidden Tactics artwork for Christmas. Yeah, let me hang it up there. Perfect. Actually not. Like, really? There's a huge light reflection on the poster. Now, every time I look up from my screen when I'm working, I'll have a reminder of how much of a failure I am as an indie game dev. Thanks for listening to me on this one, and sorry to let you know so late. I really needed time to process what I felt like was my biggest failure in game dev. But don't worry, I now feel totally okay with this, and I'm taking it as just part of the learning process. I think many aspiring game devs have fallen in scope creep before, so I'm not the first one. I won't be the last one. I'm just glad I realized I was in that situation before being completely paralyzed, and also proud to have jumped in a new project with so much energy. I'm not completely excluding to go back to Hidden Tactics, changing the design in a way to make it work, whether it be switching from real-time to turn-based, removing the physics, or simply reducing the amount of units on the battlefield. Just not now. And I'm continuously coming up with new game ideas with not enough time to develop them. I guess that's the curse of any indie game dev. So the probability of me going back to my first failed project keeps dropping, but never say never. So if you enjoyed hearing me out complain about my dream job for the last 10 minutes, well, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. That really supports me and my work. Thanks for sticking with me, and see you in my next video. I guess you're gonna have to wait quite a while to press that play button.